The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I go there less and less these days. Like weeks will go by now in between. But I was on Twitter or X, and there's an account there called Exalted Speed, and I always think I'm assuming he brings interesting things to the table. I really like the account. I like what gets discussed. They're punchy at times, which I appreciate. I like the delivery, so it's a great account to follow. But I was noticing this argument that came up that seemed to be sprung out of John Byrne, and then morphed into kind of the New 52. And where John Byrne's concerned, quickly, because this video is about New 52, obviously, you clicked on it. Byrne's an interesting character. The part that's kind of odd to me is how fashionable it is to dismiss and diminish the stuff that John Byrne did, really in the last, I would say, 4 years. So for a little bit of context, I mean, Byrne did a lot of work at Marvel, a lot of work at DC. Obviously, he's one of the, kind of legendary creators, whether you love him or hate him as a person. And he certainly is he has supporters and detractors plenty, and he has a very definitive personality. That's not the right word. He rubs people the wrong way, or can, but there are other people who get along with him. It's just I think the expression, he's become a cranky old man. Again, I like him. He definitely there was some no-shows that happened with the shop. So despite all of that, I mean, for me, he sold a lot of comics. So number one, and number two, I like his art. I like what he did. I like what he brought to the table. So I find the hatred of Byrne puzzling. Beyond just like, I don't like his attitude. Okay, fine. I can get that. But some of the other stuff, it's just weird. And then of late, it's become very fashionable to really kind of dogpile of like, his stuff was sexist, his stuff was racist, his stuff was filled with the patriarchy. I mean, just like it's now we're litigating comics in the late 70s and going, he drew women in dresses and not pants, and so he's sexist. I mean, just absurd stuff. If you read She-Hulk and you walked his version of it, and you walked away thinking he had a problem with women, you're out of your mind. I'm just full stop. That's definitely a looking at a very warped view of past. But anyway, this thread's going on about Byrne, and the comment got made of like, hey, Byrne's stuff or Superman was certainly more notable than the New 52. And, for what it's worth, in my opinion, I would agree. I think Byrne's Superman run is, polarizing is too strong a word. People are using it more now. But he definitely retcons some stuff. And this was back at a time when, retconning things was a little bit more unusual. And he did the whole, I mean, how could we forget the big Barda sex tape, the storyline that was going on. But because some people liked his Superman, so he definitely changed around the past. He changed the character. And so for people who are big fans of Superman prior to Byrne coming on board, his stuff was jarring and I think frustrating for some of the the buyers. And I get that they changed the character. I mean, I can't knock that if you like certain aspects and then he altered it, get it. But the New 52 Superman, I think, was largely kind of abysmal of a run. And it's interesting to see, I mean, all of the different shenanigans, particularly, by the way, in the Superman office, where you had old Uncle Eddie there being a complete, absolute creep. And covering up for people covering up for him and other things that were going on. But in the comics themselves, you had Grant Morrison, who put in a very, I don't know, to me, very uninteresting Superman. I think I'm somewhat love-hate with Grant Morrison. I think that the Batman work that he did was certainly interesting. I think the events are interesting. I think that his X-Men run is pretty overrated, but his Superman run I thought was pretty terrible. yeah, I didn't enjoy it. Again, it's a subjective point of view. You can some people like it, some people don't. But part of the thing that he was trying to go for was a Superman who was more, for the people, more, Occupy Wall Street, I think was what he had said at the time, that he was more going to be on that end of things. And it just the writing of the character just wholly uninteresting to me. You also had George Perez, who did the other Superman title for like a heartbeat, but kind of resigned or asked to leave the title out of absolute frustration. The New 52 in general, though, moving beyond Superman, I think was a bit of a train wreck. Now, that said, there's one undeniable fact that people who don't like the New 52 often fail to mention, and that is for the first couple of years of it, it was a sales winner. It absolutely defeated Marvel for quite a while. It was a long stretch of about a year where it outsold Marvel. The New 52 did. And so, for whatever it's worth, whether we want to be, we can, a lot of the stuff that I'm about to go into is very subjective. But the objective fact is it outperformed Marvel, which DC had struggled to do forever and has struggled to do since. So, you at least have to put that out there that, parts of that reboot and that rebrand and everything they did was successful. No doubt about it. Was absolutely successful. And, so right now, put it this way, if DC could say, hey, we'd love to replicate the New 52 and the sales success we had with it, you do that all day long. And DC should. And comic shops would thank them for it. So that's the uncomfortable fact about the New 52 people often leave out. In terms of the comics themselves, I mean, there was some daring, some interesting things. I thought the work on Swamp Thing, the work on Animal Man, the work on iVampire, there was some kind of indie stuff in there, or had that feel to it that was interesting. I liked what they did with Animal Man a lot during that run. I think Scott Snyder had did quite a bit with what he was given in terms of his work on Batman and other titles he was on. I think that there were elements of the New 52 certainly that were experimental, and that was appreciated. I think both comic companies fell into a rut, and afterwards fell into a rut since. But when it launched, there was an attempt to do different things. It was an attempt in many ways to kind of throw back to the 90s. There was that feel to it as well. You had Jim Lee on a comic book for, again, like a hot minute. But there were a lot of pieces to the comic, to those runs, where it definitely had that 90s feel in terms of costumes, in terms of kind of approach, in terms of storytelling, in terms of a lot of those pieces. There was definitely that attempt to kind of regain that power. And I think that's a lot of why it sold well. But over time, the flaw of the New 52 became stunt storytelling, wore off rather quickly, and the New 52 became the DCU. And then you had Convergence in there, and ultimately you had Rebirth, which was this admission by Jeff Johns and Ed Didio at the time, saying, "Hey, we lost our way. We stopped listening to the fans. We just didn't do this thing right." It would be interesting to, in hindsight, what's interesting is I find that a lot of the people who defend the New 52 and kind of how it got started also loved Rebirth and what DC did next. But Rebirth was in many ways an answer to a lot of the ways that the New 52 had gone wrong. I think that, if I'm being very generous here, I think the New 52, when it launched, there was an attempt to do something different and talk to the fans and get them excited. And I think there was an attempt to kind of put the right foot forward and some good planning that went into it. And that was appreciated. It just weirdly went off the rails in strange and interesting ways. But I'll kick it to you guys. Did you like the New 52? Do you miss it? I guess you could weigh in on the, which Superman, New 52 Superman or Byrne Superman, which is the one that you liked better. We'll keep it positive. But again, I'm fascinated a little bit by the New 52 defenders who've come up lately, because it it really had, I mean, there, if you read the comics steadily through that run, yes, in the first couple months, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of, again, it felt like they put a good foot forward of doing something very different. There was certainly a lot of frustration from long-term DC fans about everything that got erased. But there was a sense of, hey, so there's some enthusiasm here. It just, a year into it, you have the comments from Perez, you have again, the Morrison run seemed to disappoint. You had a lot of elements of that just seemed to spiral rapidly off the rails. And I'm always fascinated when somebody comes into hard defended. I think they're really remembering that beginning part, and the kind of the conclusion to that was very different. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.